Good afternoon. I'm Parker Padgett.
And I'm Tony Wynn.
And it's another installment of our Vital Vault, where we're taking a look at some of the some records from the past to talk about in the present. Maybe you'll listen to in the future. I think that's definitely in.
Yes.
This week we are talking about Van Halen's 1984. Tony, I understand that you listened to this earlier this week. Kind of give me some of your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. My first initial thoughts was there's a lot of synthesizers and keyboards. And so I was like, who plays that? Because I wasn't sure who did it. And upon my research, it's old Eddie, of course. And I guess this is also the debut of him wanting to really experiment a lot more with the synthesizers and what have you. So obviously with the opening track being very heavily that, and then leading into Jump, it all kind of made sense. And it was enjoyable going through the whole album. I definitely felt like the first half was a lot stronger than the second half. But Hot for Teacher was certainly a highlight for me at the end there.
Yeah, it's very clear that, obviously the album 1984 came out in 1984, I believe. And it kind of felt like a risk. You know, Van Halen had always been this hard rock, very heavy electric guitars, driving drums. And it almost felt like a compromise. And the notes that I wrote, it kind of felt like maybe Eddie Van Halen saw into the future and knew that pop was just around the corner, and compromised that pop synth sound with the heavy metal. And you mentioned it, the first track is called 1984, and it's obviously an interlude, and it's very heavy on the synth. It's futuristic. It really sets the tone that, like, hey, this is going to be an influence in the album. And then that, like you mentioned, leads right into Jump. Ironically, one of their most famous hits of all time, yet one of their least hard rockists, if that makes sense.
True. Yeah.
Let's see some of the notes I have on here. The drums in this, I believe it's Alex Van Halen that plays the set in this album. Use of the toms, especially leading into every chorus, I feel like is a good use. It's not just drum, or it's not just bass kick and snare. Like, he uses the whole kit. Something I thought that was interesting about that song is it has the guitar solo, and it's a typical Van Halen guitar solo. It starts off strong, and then he starts, picking individual notes in a very fast tempo. But it also feels like before the slowdown, the keyboard takes over the solo, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. It's like they pass off the solo, and I thought that was interesting. But it's definitely not one of their more hard rock-y songs, but it's an iconic tune. I actually found myself struggling to listen to it with critical thinking, because I'm like, this is such a great song. I've heard this like every year of my entire life. But yeah, that leads into Panama. How do you feel about that song?
Well, it just reminds me of just how the 80s rock, and especially Van Halen, where it's all about energy. It's all about partying. It's all about the girls and everything like that. And that whole album, just is relentlessly like, this is what we're about. This is what we love, and we're going to show you with synthesizers and guitars, and of course David Lee Roth's, squealing voice and everything. And Panama, I listened to the song on Wednesday, and it's been in my head the whole time, and I feel like I keep hearing it whenever I go to stores and stuff. That's how much like just how much of an earworm that song is. So it's an obvious hit single. You got to put that one on, and especially since that one definitely feels more like classic Van Halen with the guitar work and everything.
I was gonna say it's kind of like the way they structured the album was, you had 1984 heavy on the synths, Jump, which is basically led by the synth and the keyboard the entire time, and then it feels like when they were putting this album together, they're like, okay, well, we have to remind people that we're still Van Halen. We're not some new band. And so, yeah, they definitely go back to their roots with that. I was doing some research on the track. According to several reports and stories, the slow burning bridge, the engine revving according to some history, is actually Eddie Van Halen's Lamborghini. They just recorded him revving up his Lamborghini, which I feel like just adds to the coolness of just, living in the 80s, revving your car up, screaming Panama out the window. They really don't ever address why it's called Panama.
Well,
the song, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I listened to the lyrics. Clearly he is with this woman, and the bridge really sets the scene. Do you know why it's called Panama?
Yeah, actually, it's not about a girl. It is the band was interviewed, and the reporter accused them of only writing songs about partying, girls, and fast cars. Well, David Lee Roth was like, actually, I've never written a song about a car, so let's write a song about a car, in Panama. And so,
see, I didn't even know Panama was a car.
Yeah, so as you go back and listen to the lyrics again, viewing it as, he's talking about a really slick car. I mean, there's obvious innuendos to,
Yeah, well, this album is full of innuendos.
Yeah. I mean, there's no mistake, and sometimes it's just right in your face. But yeah, Panama was a little bit more cleverly, veiled that it's actually about a car and not about a woman.
Well, that would make sense with the engine revving. The slow burn with the solo, and then the harmony at the end. I mean, there's this there's an old Family Guy episode where Peter buys a car, and actually I think what happened was his Lois wants him to start reading, so she sends him to the library, and he checks out 1984, and you would think that it's the book 1984, but he accidentally checks out the album 1984, and so he can't stop listening to Panama, and he leads police on this chase, and the cops are making fun of the bridge, and they're like, hopefully he'll slow down at the bridge and we can catch him then, and they almost do. He hits the cliff during the harmony. It was a great scene. I like Family Guy. So that's obviously going back to their roots. Like, it's a great song. The chorus is obviously very catchy. It's simply just Panama, but the way that it's structured and you shout it, you can't not enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it the album took a turn for me here because, you had the interlude, you had Jump, you had Panama, and then Top Jimmy. It felt to me like they were exploring something with this song. I didn't like it. It wasn't my favorite. I don't know how you feel about it.
It was definitely a very strange contrast between, I guess, like the main riff going into the verse. As a guitar player, I'm listening to it and thinking, oh, this is a cool riff that they're doing, doing harmonics and everything. And then it leads to a very strange beat, I suppose, and just I don't know. It definitely felt weird listening to it, and I wanted to say like, oh, okay, like this is neat, but upon listening to it a second time around, I'm like, yeah, this is definitely a skippable song. Let's move on to the next one. So yeah, I would agree with you there.
Yeah, and then that leads into the last song of side A on the vinyl, which is Drop Dead Legs. And the note that I had just one note. I think I've learned that the less notes I take, typically the more I'm enjoying a song. And that one I just wrote a head knocker. That's just one that you just kind of just move your head to. It's also kind of back in their hard rock element. I don't think there was too much synth, if any at all, in this song. I don't know if you heard much, but I assume this song was about a woman, unless you're telling me this one's about a car as well.
This is about a table. I did not see any extra trivia about this, so I can only assume as well that it's either about a table or a woman.
Well, and I mean, it's not a bad song. It's better than Top Jimmy, but it's one of those ones where it's on the Apple Essentials for Van Halen, in terms of playlist to really get to know them. But like, when I think of Van Halen, I don't think of this song.
Sure.
But the second half, I think the first two songs are very very important entries in the Van Halen catalog. You have Hot for Teacher, which is one of probably one of their, I'd say, top 5 songs, maybe top 3 in terms of commercial success and people putting the two together. How do you feel about that song?
I can't stop thinking about, honestly, the music video for it, as that is probably even more popular as it as MTV was really popping off at that time. I mean, that music video, again, watching the band be the band and everything like that. It's definitely a video that I'll always remember. The song in itself as well, just the iconic like bass drum like solo like leading into it, and it being recorded actually doubled. So I
was gonna say, talk to me about that, because it kind of just sounds like an idle engine.
I think that might be a little bit of the feel. I'm not sure why, and maybe it's another car innuendo. But I mean, the Hot for T-shirt you would assume would be very much that. But yeah, apparently Alex did a riff via drums, and then recorded another track over it, and it's overlaid. So it's one of those songs that infamously, drummers should not be able to actually play, because it's impossibly to hit all of these, notes at the same time and what have you. But I literally just watched a YouTuber do it. And
I was going to say, is that something that people can do successfully live?
Yeah, I don't think even Alex Van Halen could do it.
Well, I always thought it was interesting. Because I mean, I got the double bass kick, and it's one thing. It's very apparent in this song, and it's apparent in other songs. And I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but it's clear that you and I have listened to albums in the past where the drums have just been part of the song. The drums in this album are almost the foundation of every song. It's such a driving force that it's almost like the rest of the instruments are reacting to the drums, and instead of everybody just being together, if that makes sense.
Yes, it's definitely drum driven, as the guitars just complement it, as you go into the verse and then the big chorus. Yeah.
And some notes I wrote here. I wrote, it's another iconic song, as we mentioned before. The innuendos in this one are humorous to me, especially when David Lee Roth says that he has his pencil. I don't think he's taking notes. But what I wrote about the innuendos and the spoken parts specifically is that they don't feel forced. It almost feels like as if they were doing, like, I don't know how to phrase this. It's like, how podcasts are just casual conversations between people. They're not super formal. It's just people talking.
Yes.
It kind of feels like that. It kind of feels like they just randomly recorded the guys just vibing in the studio. Mm-hmm. It felt casual, didn't feel forced. It felt like they were having fun. Obviously, they enjoyed the humorous aspect through the songwriting process, which leads into this is I'll Wait. And it's the sixth track, maybe? I don't know. It's the second track on side 2. It's my favorite Van Halen song of all time.
Really?
It is. There's something about the keyboards in the beginning that just, I don't know, lift me. I don't know how to describe it. It's just, I hear it and it's like that gif of the Undertaker coming up out of the casket. It's like that. Something that a lot of people don't know about this song is that Michael McDonald helped write it. And I just think that it's funny that in an alternate universe, there's a version of this song with Michael McDonald singing it. I'm not going to do the impression. And then, doing some songwriting. Obviously, this is a song about a guy that has, I'm assuming, a crush on a magazine model. It's somewhat apparent in the lyrics. But it's just, and then the solo, I feel like the solo could have been better, the guitar solo. It didn't have that stereotypical Van Halen feel. Like, he didn't do as many, he didn't have any quick tempo runs. Mm-hmm. But it's I'll admit it, it's a simple song. Mm-hmm. It's simple. It's not too complex, but I thoroughly enjoy it. And honestly, I have this song above every other song Van Halen has to offer, not just this album alone. I imagine you probably feel differently.
I wouldn't say that it's my favorite, but it was definitely a single that I have only heard maybe once prior to listening to the album. And also surprised that it's Van Halen, but also like, oh yeah, like in terms of an album and everything, it's nice to have a little bit of a rest from the high energy for a bit, and and listen to something a little bit slower, a little bit more, yes, I suppose simple. But I think it just complements everything being put together. And yeah, I believe I heard that with the magazine, or maybe it was like a poster or something like that.
Yeah.
But like I think Roth had a photo that he might have even brought into the studio and used as inspiration to put out there as they're putting the music together.
And that might be subconsciously maybe why I like this song the most, is because it's rock, but it's not too hard of a rock song. It's just kind of like in that middle ground where, kind of going off the jump angle. It's kind of a compromise between, the impending. We talked about, I think it was Wham last week, right?
Yeah.
Wham was just all pop, and then going, kind of blending those two sounds to satisfy an audience that's in that transition period from the classic rock of the 70s into the pop and techno of the 80s.
Yeah, and Van Halen, really, you hear the different influences and everything like that. And I mean, again, just piecing together an album, sometimes you do need a break from just the one sound. And actually, now that I think about it, last week was Ray Charles.
Oh, yeah, it was Ray Charles.
And one thing that I noticed with that was that for a while, I thought it was just going to be your standard blues, every single song. And for a while, it was, until you got more higher energy, more, I guess, classic Ray Charles stuff. But with this album, there's enough variety that it feels like a complete album.
Tell me something. You're in a band. Mm-hmm. Is Van Halen songs difficult to cover, or do you even try? Could they be too complex? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie Van Halen is a guitar god. He invented quite a bit of techniques. If you ever see anybody tapping, he's kind of known for, if not inventing it, being a pioneer of bringing that into forefront of guitar solos and guitar work.
Yeah.
And then again, just, a drummer trying to do the intro to Hot for Teacher.
Your legs will fall off.
Yeah, right. I think structurally not too complex in terms of any type of progressive. It's very straightforward. It's very rock, but it's what they do within that parameter that is so complex and everything.
The last two songs, I think I didn't like the last two songs. I mean, they were very Van Halen-y and obviously fit their niche. They didn't do it for me. I don't know if you felt the same way or felt different.
It definitely didn't stand out to me. It was by the time it got to those songs, I felt myself drifting, in my thoughts and what have you, and then trying to remind myself, oh yeah. I'm listening to Van Halen right now, So yeah, I agree that, and one wonders, because I believe, and maybe the song or the album, I don't think ever got to a number one status.
That's the one thing I hadn't had time to do this week, is look up the commercial success. I do know that from what I have read, this album and their debut album are their most commercially successful albums of all time. I don't know if it garnered any Grammys or anything like that. I do know that I think David Lee Roth came back in the new millennium, but in terms of moving from David Lee Roth to Sammy Hagar, I think this was the last Roth entry, at least until the 2000s, which, I mean, heck of a way to go out. But do you know anything about the history of this album cover? It's an interesting album cover. It's a small toddler, maybe a baby. It's a tall baby with angel wings smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of controversial because of what it is. So it's supposed to be a cherub. It is that type of small baby-ish, almost like looking like Cupid.
It's a very tall baby.
And obviously it's there smoking a cigarette and everything like that. And that was the controversy, was that like, oh, we shouldn't be showing babies, smoking cigarettes and what have you. So I believe they put like stickers right on top of the where the placement of the cigarettes and everything would be of a parental advisory, sticker or something like that.
I just don't know if it means anything.
So usually the cherub is like represents kind of the sexual and this is just a very brief like trying to look up to see what's the meaning behind it. That like the cherub does have a in particular very Van Halen themes behind it, but I unfortunately didn't go deep into it.
And I just looking at it and thinking about the album itself and all the contents in it. A lot of these songs, minus the one about the car, are about loving something, whether it's your teacher or your car or a picture of a person in a magazine. It kind of, maybe it's a metaphor for maybe Cupid's kind of on break. Maybe Cupid's exhausted trying to help Van Halen out finding love. And is kind of just maybe looking back at the band like, I'm tired. You guys are wearing me out. I can't do this anymore. That's a first impression interpretation based off of the conversation that we're having now. But
I love it.
Tony, final thoughts?
Actually, now I'm just so focused on what you just said that I have to reevaluate my thoughts and be like, actually, that's a really great, thought into what's the album.
We don't have anything to say that I'm wrong, so we have to. We can only assume that's. I mean, no one's here to correct us. From the band,
sure, we can call up the remaining surviving members to see what it was all supposed to mean. But
final thoughts.
Sorry. Overall, it was nice listening to some real rocking songs and some songs that I hadn't heard in a while or at all. And so again, this whole experience has always been a great experience of just exposing myself to newer / old music, older music, and just rounding myself out as an individual.
Well, and I feel the same way with this segment, like you mentioned. We are listening to music that we either would listen to all the time or music that we would never ever listen to, and so it's interesting to get different perspectives of because music is almost an encapsulation of time as well. This album is very 80s rock. There's no, you can tell that music today has taken influence from it, not vice versa. Obviously, how could that happen? But I like this album. I think this album is, like I mentioned before, this album and their debut album were their more commercially successful albums, and it's clear based on the content in these albums. And I have a couple other Van Halen albums at home, and there's maybe one or two of their hits, and that's it. This one is packed with either hits that or songs that you'll fall in love with, and so I think it's good. I think it's a good album.
I think you said earlier that it feels very very 80s and everything like that, and you're right about the foresight of knowing that synthesizers were going to be a huge part of the pop sound and everything. And I believe the singles only got as high as maybe 2, because Thriller had come out as well. And
Oh yeah.
so, but coincidentally, Beat It also has Van Halen on it, Eddie Van Halen doing the riff. So in a way, he was number 1 and number 2.
He's playing both sides, so he comes out on top.
Yeah.
But that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Vinyl Vault. Let us know in the comments if you think there's anything that we should check out, genres, albums specifically. But we'll be back next week with a new edition. And as always, I'm Parker.
I'm Tony.